Welcome to another episode of the Scottish Property Podcast. My name's Nick Ponte. I'm here with Stephen Clark. How you doing, Stephen?
Good, Nick. You have pulled it out the bag today, mate. I think if anyone listens to this podcast regular, know that I love to get inspiring guests on, and Nick likes to educate you guys and bring on what I would call the boring stuff. But we need it. But you have pulled it right out the bag, mate. You've probably got on is it the biggest guest, I think?
Oh yeah, I mean, this guy's a big hitter, and probably like nobody have probably heard of him before because everybody knows the social media influencers, the guys that are popping up on Instagram and all that. But see the ones that are really doing it in property, a lot of the times you find that they're not out there on social media. And the guy we've got today, his name's Bill Roddie. His company's called Spectrum Properties. And I didn't know much about him. I started reading bits and pieces in the press about his company, Spectrum Properties. I've just bought this bit of land. Spectrum Properties are developing this old building in Glasgow. And I was like, I better start looking into this guy a little bit more. And then obviously I reached out to, it turns out it's his daughter who I've been communicating with, who obviously works in his company as well. And he agreed to come on the podcast and talk a little bit about his journey. So it was brilliant.
I find this is really rare because we're kind of building and growing our businesses in a modern world where social media is a big thing and we've got to put ourselves out there. But the guys, the ones that we really want to speak to are the guys that started. I mean, I think Bill said he started when I was born, like mid-80s. You know, you're like, shit, like these guys have been doing it for a long time, been through the mill. But I mean, we're talking about this. Spectrum's owns, I mean, didn't quite touch on it. I think Nick looked into it, and it's over 700 properties I've got, but the developments that they're doing, you know, just the wealth, the experience, and the fact that he was so open and willing to come on and share his kind of story and his journey as well as in the podcast was really, really good.
Yeah, so starting out in the commercial, like the bread and butter is commercial property, and now they're venturing quite a lot into residential space as well. Talked about a build to rent project that he's got. Talked about big flat developments they've done all over Glasgow, you know, 80, 90 apartment developments. He talked about old buildings as well. He's got a passion for bringing old buildings back to life or keeping the facades and all the process involved in that. There's just so much in there.
Wow. So without further ado, let's cut to the interview with Bill Roddie from Spectrum Properties.
So welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast, Bill Roddie from Spectrum Properties. How are you today?
I'm well. Thanks for the invite, Nick.
Great to have you on, Bill. And I've actually noticed your name and your photo as well. I was saying you don't really look like your photo in the papers, but your name's been popping up a lot lately in the media. So I thought, wait a minute here. We've been doing this podcast 2 years now, and we've not had Spectrum Properties and Bill on. So I started digging a little bit deeper into you, and I think you've got maybe 700 properties across central Scotland, commercial.
Yeah, mainly commercial properties. Small industrial units.
Excellent. So you're obviously doing something right. And I think looking back as well, you've been in this business a while. So I'm sure, you know, we'll be able to get a good bit of knowledge from you. But we like to go back to the start with our guests and, you know, just how was it that you got involved in the property business and sort of when and where did you start?
Well, mid-80s, really. I was in my mid-20s then. If you'll not remember, Nick, but Maggie Thatcher made it quite easier for people to borrow money. So I marched my dad along to the bank as my guarantor and get a loan for one of the main banks to allow me to buy some commercial property in East End of Glasgow at a time when nobody really wanted to buy that property. That was in Kilmarnock. And I'm talking about industrial units at £10,000, £15,000, which to me seemed a great deal until you got into the guts of the property and found that you had to spend the same again on them, and sometimes more because the roofs were shot, services were shot, and to make them lettable, I was not going to be occupying them. I was looking to buy them to rent them out, and the properties that we did buy we still own today.
What inspired you, Bill, back then to take that jump and not even what most our guests would do, which would be kind of the easy route buy to let? You went straight in for commercial.
I seen it as a challenge, but I also seen it as an opportunity to invest in my own skills. At the time, this was almost like a passive income. I mean, we were buying a property that was needing some money spent on it to make it lettable, and even then, we didn't know the full market in that area for lettable properties in a commercial. And we're talking about maybe 400 or 500 square foot units, like 2 or 3 times the size of a lock-up garage. But there was a big market for that, which was great. And from that, we continued to buy up smaller properties until we ended up buying the entire estate, which is in Cotton Street. I seen it as a way of just being in charge of our own destiny. When I say my own, I mean Spectrum's destiny going forward, and setting up a portfolio of properties that gave us an income and a track record.
So just set the scene back then. So like we're talking about mid-80s. So did you have another job at the time that wasn't in property, or where did you?
I served my time as a motor mechanic, and I was doing a lot of home renovations for people. So during the day I was repairing their cars, and at night time I was probably wallpapering their living room or decorating their house. And working hard because I had plenty of energy at that time.
Brilliant.
And an 18-hour day, 7 days a week was doable then. Setting up, saving some money and using that money to put down my deposit for a loan. Paid the loan back off in 3 years. Didn't require my dad as a guarantor, which he was happy, because we're a working class family. When my parents worked other days. I mean, we never had a car in our family till I was 16, I don't think.
Did you grow up in Glasgow?
Yeah, I did, in East End of Glasgow.
East End, right?
In Baylis. Well, Westmuir Street, Parkhead first, but as a kid, and then moved into Baylis, and we were in Baylis right up. My father's still in Baylis today.
Right, okay. Because you do have a lot round about the East End. Was that obviously like because you the first investments there and that you feel quite comfortable in that area?
Totally. And I didn't know Kilmarnock that well because that was the first investment, but it was close enough to Baylis where I stayed that it gave me an idea. Any of my friends that I could rope in to help me do some works was beneficial to me. For, I don't know, a sandwich and a cup of tea is all they got. Maybe an Empire biscuit, I don't know. But
I love an Empire biscuit.
Yes, I will. Maybe give you a job next week, Nick.
Now, when you first kind of went for these properties, did you have a tenant demographics lined up in place? Like, did you have an idea of who you rented to or what they would rent?
Definitely not. No, I wish I did. A lot of it was just luck. Being in the right place. The Kilmarnock area of Glasgow was quite poor. In fact, if you to look at a map of Glasgow, the East End of Glasgow had the majority of contaminated land, because back in the day, that's when all the industry was. Your Sir William Arrows, and the Forge retail part was built on where it used to be the Parkhead Forge. So a lot of that ground was contaminated. A lot of the small businesses that assisted these larger businesses were surrounding really Bridgeton, Kilmarnock, Shettleston, Parkhead, that area. So no, we never had any demographics. We were just, once a unit was near complete, we were putting a to-let sign up, putting it in a small ad in the Yellow Pages then. There wasn't a lot of social media. There wasn't a lot of connections and platforms that you have today. And word of mouth get out. And we started renting out to small garages mainly. With me being in the motor industry, well, being a motor mechanic, I served my time as that. I had a small garage in Shettleston. And that's where I managed to save some money to get a deposit for the property. One of my customers that used to come in had a couple of residential properties in the Govan area, and it was him that first sparked my interest in looking at that, because he wasn't working hard. It was just really collecting the rent and using whatever cash he had to reinvest in his business. So I took a leaf out of his book
And why do you
But
think
then
you went commercial rather than the residential? If you had that mate that was in the residential, did you not? Why do you think? Because it was cheaper, or
I couldn't afford it. Couldn't get a mortgage then. I mean, I couldn't get a mortgage for my first flat. My first flat was in Shettleston, and
right.
it cost me £2,900. The bank, the building societies and banks had a minimum lend of £15,000 to get a long-term mortgage, or they wouldn't make any money out of it. So I had to go to a merchant bank and borrow £2,000 and put the £900 to myself. But I wouldn't say that was my first foray into property. That was me needing a home, but it educated me a little in how difficult it was to borrow money. Because if you never had a good track record or parents that could support you, the banks weren't interested in talking to you. And as I said, in the mid-80s, when Maggie Thatcher made it possible for people to buy homes, the banks opened their doors to anybody that had equity to offer.
Right. So not necessarily starting up, but something to offer, something behind them.
But yeah, you needed it. You needed some equity. But more important, you had to build a track record to get the banks to give you, to invest in you. Buying your own home was one thing, but asking them to take a punt on giving you some money to go and buy some industrial property in the roughest area of Glasgow, they wanted to see that you could make it work. So after probably 4 or 5 properties and them renting and the money going into the bank, because the most important thing was to reinvest every penny back into the business, take the minimum that was needed. And that was the harder days, building it up from there. And probably the best days as well, because I always found that we performed best working behind the 8 ball. I mean, once we were under pressure, that last furlong, to get the job finished, to get the rental in. And it had a lot of its ups and downs as well, but the most important thing was reinvesting everything that we had into it, and still doing today.
And at that time, did you reinvest the income into the money to put in on the next one, or was it to pay down the debt, or just to keep growing?
Oh, both. It was both. I mean, the debt, paying down the debt was quite easy because it wasn't a massive loan. So it was just, I was still running my day job, if you know what I mean. So I could easily pay the debt on the back of in the back of my income there. The increase in equity was great. I mean, not right away, you didn't see it, but after 3-4 years, you'd have an increase in the equity because property was on the up, and you could see increases. Certainly, if I'm buying something that needed developed, you could see a yield return 20% quite easily, and an increase in the property price of 8-10% a year in some of these areas. So after 3 years, taking my portfolio, which was maybe 40 grand, after 4 years, it could easily be 70 grand, 80 grand on a valuation, because it valued better if there was a tenant in it giving you income rather than sitting vacant.
Aye. Tell us a little bit, because it's not often we get people that have got this much experience and started this early. And just lately, we've been doing a lot.
Make me sound old now, Nick.
So you're looking great, by the way. It's not often, and we've been talking about rising interest rates recently. You know, everybody's now looking back on the kind of cycles of the past, and one of the things that everybody brings up is the early 90s. You know, where I think
14% interest rate I had at that time. It wasn't for that long, so we managed to survive it, but it was scary.
Right. So you obviously came through that, and so when you lift up the papers now and you hear about, you know, interest rates are doubling to 1%, you must just laugh at that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, this is a great position for anyone that has got any sort of loan. This is the best time. It really is. I mean, it's great. Yeah. Back in the days, when interest rates were on the rise, I mean, 8-9% was your average. 12-14%, no, that was unusual. But that's when properties could be bought, because people were flustering and not taking forward development. So there was it was a good market.
So the opportunity was there. So you saw the opportunity.
Totally, aye. And you'd love to buy 100 times more, but you could only buy with what you had. So what you could borrow for the bank, what you had in your own bank. Also, sometimes buying some properties, it's not done immediately. It's not like an auction. You go to an auction and pay in 28 days. If you're buying from a local council or individuals, they're quite happy to wait 3-4 months by the time you get your deal done. So you're riding on the back of that. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you're looking to get it let or flipped. I mean, we've flipped lots of properties as well. If you've got an owner-occupier or somebody want to come in, it's of a lot more interest to them than it is for us just to turn it around as an investment.
Mm-hmm. And when you built up in the mid-80s to like the 90s, when the first, I suppose, recession came, what was your kind of property portfolio looking like then, and how did you weather the first storm?
Certainly by the mid-90s or the early 90s, we had bought the majority of Cotton Street. We had established well with the bank, had bought some residential over in the West End, which was, it was an existing bedsit business of 6 bedsits in a building in North Kelvinside. So this
was before the term HMO came about, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
this was bedsits.
Wouldn't even think it wasn't like slum landlords or anything like that. We had bought it. I say we Spectrum. I had bought that as an investment because it was fully let. Now, we paid £34,000 for it. It was in Garriock Road, and it was a main door flat and basement, but subdivided into 6. They were renting then, I'm sure it's £40 a week per unit. Right. So 196, whatever it was, 190 quid per month. They all had slot meters in them for the electricity, and they were all out to students. But that building, that property, I sold in 3 years' time at £140,000. The market was going crazy. That property today is probably worth £500,000.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, they say the property on average doubles in value every 10 years. I don't know about that, but that would probably work out a bit right, actually.
Well, it depends who wants to buy it. I mean, if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, that really depends. But you'll know, you read it every day in the press about residential properties, and 20-25% is not unusual now if somebody wants a property, especially if there's a rural element to it. They'll maybe pay 40% more.
Absolutely. So it must have got to a point then where, you're really ramping it up, scaling up the business, and you must have given up the tools, being a mechanic, quite, what's that?
I can still turn my hand to a shifting spanner.
So you obviously made that decision. When did you say, what sort of year would you say really you focused 100% your energy on?
I would say 92, 93, I probably thought, right, let's concentrate. And it was a full-time job then, and it was supporting my income and my family.
Yeah.
And it was a full-time job. My job was looking for properties to invest in, to buy them. And that was the exciting bit about it, looking for it and finding it. And the Herald then, every Thursday, that was the paper to buy for the property section. So anybody selling anything, again, there was no any social media. It was either word of mouth or somebody ran an advert. And all your estate agents, like your DM Halls of this world, would have their advert in the Herald. And it was an open market situation. The trick was getting in quick, trying to get a hold of the vendor and saying, right, what kind of deal can we do? Showing them the money and doing the deal quick. And that's what's important. Somebody getting in with a never-ending deal subject to getting planning consent or anything else isn't as attractive as somebody giving them a quick deal. And that is the case today. But yeah, I would say that was a full-time job then, and it was looking at properties, anything to do with property, but it was always commercial property, and that was a route that we went down. The residential element, we only tripped over them if we were buying a property with residential involved in it, whether it was a caretaker's flat or whether it was a block of 4 or 6 properties within a portfolio we were buying.
And did the business really ramp up then when you kind of quit your job and went full time in the early 90s?
Yeah, that was an exciting time for property because it was on the up. okay, got over the high interest rates, there was opportunities then it settled down again. And property is one of the main commodities that we have in the world today. I mean, everybody needs it, whether it's residential or to run your business from.
Mm-hmm. And at times, is it just you working in the business, Bill, or did you have employees or bringing everyone at this time, or was it just you?
No, it was just really myself and my family, bringing in friends where I needed it, using subcontractors as and when necessary, buying a property. The majority of the time needed work done on it. You could repair the roof and maintain it for 5 years, knowing that it would need replaced in 5 years, but you needed the money in the bank to do that and then go forward. So you were always forward planning. And if from the day you bought that property, it was for sale. So if somebody came along with the right price, you would sell it and flip it. And that happened a lot as well, where it would be, I know, a tenant moving in on, say, our standard lease was 12 months. We never looked at a longer lease, probably to about 10 years into the business when we were attracting better covenants. Mm-hmm. But we would have the odd tenant to say, look, I can afford to buy this now, because it didn't want to be paying rental forever either.
In these early days, Bill, you must have had some kind of hardship and went through some tough periods of growth as well, like some more good challenges.
Oh yeah, oh totally. I mean, I wasn't a big one in looking at the stats. I was always really looking at tomorrow. I wasn't looking at what the market was predicting and how it was going to shape up. We were, I would say, very lucky, but I've got a wee saying, I mean, the harder you try, the luckier you'll be. I focused 100% on my business. Really, every waking moment was just looking at the business, how we improve the property we've got, how we can buy properties, how we can borrow the money to get it, how we can shape up to a lender and what their remit was going to be. And yeah, we did. There was some tough times as well, and times that uncertainty within the property market.
And what gave you that kind of clear mindset and growth of where you were going with it, to know that you can overcome these challenges to come out the other side of it? There was just no option for you.
Determination, determination and hard work and believing in the product, just sticking with it. There's not always been successful. There's been some property failures, but thank goodness they are few and the successes are plenty. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not always easy. There's some deals that you buy, you think the market is going one way and it doesn't. And I'm not talking about buying ransom strips or buying areas where I know there's going to be improvement. That's always good. But it's no pre-planned like that. It's buying what you can at the time and getting some hope value attached to it. And that may mean changing the planning consent from resi to commercial or vice versa. Buying a bit of land and building something on it there's good profits in that if you build the right product.
For each deal you do, Bill, in the company, do you have a kind of a view on what it's going to be, or is it very flexible and open-minded that if you do the development, get a tenant in place and someone offers you a good income or you can sell it in a hot market, do you just flip it on, cash in, reinvest in the next one, or is it always a hold, or is there ever a kind of clear plan on what
for I would say for the first 12, 15 years, I didn't want to sell any property unless someone did come along with a really attractive offer. But then I would think about that twice. Why would they want to buy it? What was the upside? And that's where you educate yourself is years of work, looking at it and doing it. So I would say for the first half of the business, I'd seen Spectrum as just a big truck driving along, picking up properties, putting them on the back and hanging on to them, because that's where our bread and butter was. That's where we were getting our money from, was the income from these properties. And every year they increased in value. So the equity increased and the gearing get lower, or your ability to borrow money. It was only once the equity was attractive enough that we could do a doubler on them. And as Nick was saying there, every 10 years they're probably double in price. They're not far away from that. But depending on who wants to buy it, depends on if you want to sell it and how much you're going to get for it. I say to people, everything's for sale. Apart from the kids, everything's for sale.
Or the wife? What about the wife?
I didn't mention that.
Hope she's not in the background.
No.
Listen, I mean, it's really fascinating, the early days. I want to bring you on a wee bit fast forward and for you to give an overview of, where you are now, and then we can maybe have a look at some of the exciting things that you've been doing lately. So to give a sort of brief overview of, what Spectrum Properties does now and, your role in the business.
Managing the portfolio that we have, looking for planning gains, as I said. We've bought a lot of land over the years that is now attractive for residential. And I would say in the last 10 years, we've moved further into the residential market. We've taken sites that we owned and got a planning gain and built them out. I mean, for instance, Springburn, we built flats up there. That was 39 flats. And that was a site it was a brownfield site that we bought. Shettleston Baths, and Shettleston was another one, 76 flats.
And these are to sell, these developments are to sell on?
Oh yeah, no, these weren't about to rent. These were totally to sell.
And did you buy these brownfield sites like years ago thinking that you'd be able to get the change of use for them or get the planning permission on them eventually?
Get the plan permission eventually, yeah. There's a big, and there still is a need for residential. And as much as we know the process is painful going through it, you've still got to go through those hoops to get it. So it was beneficial buying a site, maybe with an old, like the Shettleston Baths or the old college in Parkhead we bought. That was a College of Building and Printing. You could get a short-term rent on it. So it washed its face while you went through the planning process. Now, back 15 years ago, the planning process was pretty straightforward. Today, in today's market, you really need 18 months at the timescale to get the process ready to start. But back in the days then, buying these brownfield sites, getting a wee bit of rental income, it supported us while we went through a planning process and we got all our ducks in a row. And then we would build them out in stages, whereas the 39 units in Springburn, that was probably an 18-month deal. And we came out of that well because the market was in the up. Same with the Shettleston. When the market, the bubble hadn't burst then on the resi, so you were selling them before you even get out the ground with them.
When was that you did that? Sorry.
The ones in Springburn were 96, 97.
Right.
And they were doing well. Then we moved on from there into Shettleston 2001, 2002, coming out of that.
Right.
Parkhead, similar times, 2004, 5. It started, and as you know, leading up to 2007 and 8, before the financial crash, property was going crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sell anything. So there was flips to be done there. But sticking on the residential, we've continued with that.
Did you just focus on the residential flips at the time because the market was dictating it and was going silly and you just seen the opportunity?
Totally, yeah, taking the opportunity to take, and we're still doing that. There's a residential, the residential arm of Spectrum is doing well, and we're involved in residential developments just now, and will continue to do so as long as the market supports it. You're almost micromanaging it today because of the obvious things that's been happening in the world the last couple of years. But more importantly, getting materials and labour right now is tricky because the end sale price hasn't caught up with the material costs.
Inflation, basically, the inflation.
Oh yeah, well they're predicting that. Yeah, they're predicting this year 10% inflation, but for instance, buying materials, concrete blocks, we're looking at a job just now. They want us to order the blocks now for 3 months' time and pay for them.
Wow, it must be a headache trying to...
Oh, it is. It's every site, you think, right, when do I need them? Getting space on site is always a challenge. But to bring everything that you need onto site at once just isn't doable. So we're having to use other yards that we have to store the goods. So it's double handling, the transportation, and even things like plasterboard. It's pointless taking that and storing it because it can get damaged easily. You really want that to site as you need it, but you don't want to bring in a whole Arctic load in because you don't go through that in a week.
How is Spectrum currently set up then, Bill, at the moment? Has it got residential, commercial arms, and what other piece of the puzzle have you got? And do you oversee the whole lot?
I oversee any developments that we're doing, but I've got a great design team around us, and we employ the right architects, engineers and they're part of our design team. We've got our own development managers, letting managers, and they've got their eye out there as well, seeing what's going on and what the market is supporting. But I will oversee it, and we will plan forward what we're doing. So for the next 5 years, we've got residential developments that are coming out the ground just now. I mean, Golf Hill, you were touching on, Nick, I think some of the current stuff, that's 143 units, sorry, 134 units in Golf Hill.
Is that in Denniston?
That's in Denniston, just behind the Royal Infirmary.
Golf
Great
Hill
site.
Prime. Yeah.
Yeah, Golf Hill Prime. We were retaining that as a facade retention, and the playing fields behind it. There's that's.
You talk us through that one in detail, Bill.
Sorry,
you talk us through that one in detail then. It sounds like a really interesting project.
Yeah, old school, bought from Glasgow City Council. We did the deal to buy that, believe it or not, nearly 5 years ago. But it was a long process. Just again dealing with the planners. It was bought subject to getting planning consent, because it's a listed building, they want to retain it. It's great character to the building, but that building subsided while the kids were in it. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, and that happens quite a lot. I mean, a big crack appeared, and overnight the children were put out to different schools in the area.
I remember.
And it lay in the council's books, well, probably education's books, until they get moved over to the resi side or the commercial side of the council that they can sell it on, and then it would be advertised for sale. We were the best bidder and went through the process of getting our planning consent, which took easily 24 months to get to the end of that. And we bought that, and now we've got our warrants in place. First phase is 32 units. There'll be some cross subsidy from that to help with the facade retention of the school, because that's important. I mean, that's very expensive for the facade retention, and then doing the development in that. If you were looking at it purely commercially, you would have pulled it down and did new build there. But these old buildings really shine once they've been refurbished and redone, and you get another 100 years at them. Yeah, really beautiful.
Is there any numbers you can share with on that one, or rough overview numbers on that development?
In terms of what numbers? I mean,
like purchase price, estimate kind of development costs, and what the predicted kind of GDV would be. I mean, I know it's probably going to change quite a lot.
Purchase price was very reasonable. I mean, it was circa £500,000, which was pretty good. But the ongoing costs, again, for the facade retention, everybody's got an appetite for that. We've got a great team behind us that know how to work with these buildings and develop them as well. We work closely with conservation, and they want to see that we're going to be treating the building right. Our design team fees, planning costs, will be easily several £100,000 out of pocket to date. No earned a penny yet. On the first phase, that will cross-subsidise the facade retention. The profit, any profits, or we won't get into the black on that, probably into year 2.5, 3 of the development once we start it, and we're starting now. When hoardings are getting up, building wants are complete, and we're just going through the process. Again, micromanaging forward now to say, right, materials, what's the increase there? Increase in materials, you could easily say 25% in materials.
Aye.
When you look at your end profit, you're not getting a 25% increase in the sales. So you're having to look fast forward in that.
And a Spectrum's plan on this development to hold them all, did you say?
No, definitely not. No, this is a build to rent. This is for sale. We do have build to rent plans in place for some of our properties, because I definitely see that as a marketplace that's getting more exciting. People are more transient now. They wouldn't think twice of moving to Germany for a job for 3 years, so they don't want to be tied down.
Yeah.
Plus the fact, trying to borrow money, as you'll know, is difficult for people who are on the bottom rung of the ladder. I mean, I read somewhere that the average first-time buyer is 37 years of age.
Yeah.
And that sounds crazy. I mean, it really does.
Do you believe that the kind of economy is going to go, the majority of the people will all kind of rent in the private rental sector for that kind of time, for a lot of the kind of the facts that you stated there, you know, average salaries and the increasing, property prices are doubling every 10 years, mortgage lending, people are becoming transient, living longer, starting families later. Do you think people are not just renting for their whole days again?
I think it's heading that way. The stats that you do read now are showing that there's a higher percentage of people are willing to and want to rent a property. It's not because they can't save the deposit or get the mortgage. It's a choice that they want to do because they don't want to be tied down to that situation. I believe back in my generation and my parents' generation, you were doing well if you could buy your own house. You're doing well today if you can buy your own house and still live a lifestyle that you want to live. But if you want to get a mortgage and pay down a loan, you're then missing out on maybe some holidays or a nicer car or a lifestyle that you want to support. It's only if you're fortunate enough to be able to do both of that. That's great. But yeah, I do see the marketplace leaning towards rental and relieving people of the burden of a mortgage.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on there as well. It does seem like people are more unwilling to kind of sacrifice that lifestyle for that bit of time, just to like save up the deposit or own their own home. So yeah, I feel the same. That's going to go that way. I don't know when, but I think in the future it will definitely go that way. Yeah,
well, you'll see a lot of your build to rent operators, the bigger operators, the pension funds are now coming in there. It's certainly in Edinburgh and Glasgow just now, and they're doing big 200 plus unit developments. These are like, I would class them like college campuses, the new campuses where you've got a concierge in there who'll take parcels for you. You've possibly got a creche. I mean, I read an article as well, a communal dining room. So you'd maybe rent, not a crash pad, but maybe a 700-800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment, but you don't have a big dining room. But if you want to entertain 12 of your guests within this complex, you can have on a Saturday night a fully fitted dining room with kitchen that you can entertain your friends for not a lot of money.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a big growth sector, and you see some of the institutional investors as well getting involved in it. You know, the big pension funds and that. You see, I don't know if you've seen in Glasgow city centre, there's a
Pitt Street, the Pitt Street one, is it?
Pitt Street, and then beside the Daily Record building, I think as well. I think that could be a build to rent.
Yeah, I think there's a few of them. There's a lot more in the pipeline than you will know about, but they're now coming to fruition and getting built, and they'll be the guinea pigs, if you like, to see where the market supports that and how their occupancy levels are going.
Yeah, definitely.
When we've bought an older property in the Bridgeton area, and that got planning consent eventually. Went to go to appeal on that, but that is for a build to rent market, and we're going to redevelop that into 49 flats for rental.
Is that the old job centre?
That's it. That's the old Department of Works and Pensions and Job Centre in Musden Street. Yeah, great big building, built in the 80s, and typical government build. It's really, I'd say, superior to some of the modern buildings getting built today.
That area is flying at the moment as well in terms
Oh.
of rental demands and people who want to live there. Going back,
you can see Glasgow Green from it. You can walk into the city centre in 10 minutes.
You'll be calling it Glasgow Green when you market them.
The new West End.
Just going back to, I feel like a sense you've got a real passion for the older properties, because quite a lot of looking at your pictures and your website and even your commercial buildings, you've got quite a lot of kind of older sort of sandstone commercial sort of buildings too. So what is it about the older traditional stuff that you really enjoy?
I like the older buildings, but commercially, sometimes the bigger the issues, the bigger the profits. A lot of people will shy away from listed buildings or older buildings because it's like opening a can of worms. They don't know what they want to predict with their profit down to the nearest percent before they start the job. We're taking a punt in a lot of them, and it's paid off in the majority of the time. Yeah, sometimes you don't envisage you're going to get as much rot as you did or issues, but it compensates for the rest of the job or other jobs that you're doing. But yeah, I would say the attraction there is there's more profit in it. There's more equity to be built into it once you buy it and rent it or develop it.
It must be great as well to leave a stamp, in history, because you're talking about the old Golf Hill Primary and all that. To leave that facade and then to leave that, and that's your legacy that you've left there behind the city. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I don't look at it like that, Nick. But what I do find interesting and exciting is, like Strathclyde Business Centre, where we are, that's our offices, an old school. We've bought several old schools from the council over the years. We've got planning consent in the school and the grounds for 106 units. That's live. That's going to go ahead. There's no a month goes by we don't get someone coming up to the door who's immigrated to Canada, but they went to that school.
Yeah. And
we did have a reunion day as part of our opening day in 2002. My goodness, that's a long time ago. But that's when we opened that as a business centre. And that's it. Again, we're buying them, converting them into a use that we can use. And at the moment, as business centres, the office market is changing now with the pandemic, but it's changing for the good for us, because people want a small office, inexpensive, that they can get for 2 or 3 days a week. But back to the older buildings, the history involved in them, when you look at somebody who went to those schools over the years, and there'll be people in the press that went to those schools. I talked to some of my family at Golf Hill. My cousins all went to Golf Hill because they were from Denison, and they can't wait to go in and see the old building and show me where the headmaster's office used to be or something like that.
Jeez,
but and see some of the stuff we uncover as well. I mean, see, like, you don't remember that, but you used to get the belt at school, and it was a big leather strap, right? We find them in the school. See, when we get through the old classrooms and that, they're still lying there.
Aye.
Made in Dundee and think all stamped up.
Get them on eBay. Say maybe Sean Connery was given the belt by this belt here. Cover your development costs, your planning costs.
We threaten the wage with them. That's the only thing we've got.
Nick kind of touched on legacy there, and I'm kind of keen to know as well. Like you mentioned before, you've kind of got your family all working in it. Is your kids all working in the business?
Stephen, I'd love to say they were. My daughter works in it just now. My son did work in it for a year, but it's tough working with family. It really is, because if I'm working 18 hours a day, I'm expecting them to at least at work 10. But they've got other interests. And back to what we were saying, there's a live-work balance. And I'm the first to admit I probably worked too many hours and didn't have the family balance mixed into that.
I think we can probably all resonate with that, Stephen. We've talked about this in the past.
I mean, my kids are a bit smarter than me, I would say. They want the right balance. So they're away doing their own thing, being very successful at it, and they're happy at it.
So is it important you build that legacy for them through Spectrum as well, to make sure that they've got...
Oh, totally. I'd like for my children and grandchildren to be all benefiting from it. But also my employees as well, I want them to benefit from it, because you're only as good as them.
Yeah.
And the team that we've built up, and more so now, it's difficult getting the right staff, the right people to have a passion in it, and do it. Everybody wants, they want paid, and they want paid their due worth, but they also want I suppose a good pat in the back as well when they do well.
How hard was that, Bill? Like, coming from a property developer, and you sound you're really passionate and driven towards the property side. How was it to put a different hat on and be like, grow this business? Like, this business sounds massive. So how's it to kind of grow as a leader and a kind of manager, as a boss? Was that a difficult challenge?
I think it's just like growing up, Stephen. You learn things, and you learn by your mistakes. So whether it's dealing with my business decisions or dealing with subcontractors or staff, you treat everybody the way you want to be treated yourself. And I wouldn't ask any of my staff to do it, and I wouldn't be prepared to do. And that is important for any of the managers that we've got working with, that they have got the same ideas as well. I mean, some of my staff have worked for me for 30 years.
Wow. And
to me, that is good. I like that. I mean, they're no staff now, they're friends.
Yeah.
Because you work so long, you don't have any pals, because it's the people that work with you, your friends.
That's obviously a testament to yourself, that you've built up a culture that people are actually wanting to stay with you for 30 years. Do you know what I mean?
I wish they all did, Nick. I really do. I wish they all did. It saddens me when somebody hands their notice in. But it's life.
You mentioned earlier on about, sitting on sites and things like the time scales that, for developments and things like that, which sometimes when you see how things take years to come through planning, you think, how can anybody be bothered with going through that process? What do you think? I mean, you hear a lot in the press how, the council and what is it, all these kind of like arms of the council and the people that are involved in promoting the city of Glasgow and stuff like that, who are wanting to bring the city back to life. And to do that, I hear a lot in the plan about, residential developments and try to bring in people to live in the city again is important, and bringing back the retail, the offices and all the rest of it. But what do you think that the government or the council need to do to make it easier for developers like yourself to actually bring the city back to life again? Obviously it's struggled over COVID. What needs to happen?
Even apart from COVID, I felt with COVID, a lot of people working from home. I thought they should have produced more through the planning process, building warrant, through all the process of building. Whereas I feel a lot of people were using the pandemic as an excuse.
Some of them still are, which is annoying.
The process needs streamlined. Bottom line, when, for example, if I'm buying from Glasgow City Council, and I'm not knocking them, it's reality. If I'm buying a property from them, they've had years that they know it's coming to the market, the time it goes through their internal process. They should then be talking to the planners and the officials to have it oven ready almost. So here we go, we're going to sell this property. You can build 80 two-bedroom flats in it, and then you know what you're bidding for. What they'll do is they'll give you a piece of land or an old building that you've got to go and get your architect to put a scheme together. Now, I could look at it, Nick, and say, right, I'm going to put 80 in there. But then you might go and look at it and say, no, I'm going to go up another 4 stories and I'm going to chance it. I'm going to get 120 in there. So your bid will succeed mine, but you might get knocked down at the planning stage back to 85 if you really push it and shove it and reduce the numbers. That process takes years sometimes, 18 months, 2 years before you even kick a ball. And the council would have their money quicker if they streamlined that process. That's only one example.
When you mentioned that earlier about the school and taking that, there's 3 years to complete on it, you think that they would want their money, and like they say, it's the same organisation. One department should speak to the other one before, and then say, well,
you would love that. You would really, and that's the way it should be. And that's where not just the streamlining there, streamlining the whole planning process needs to be looked at, because I think personally you're dealing with people's own opinions. I mean, you could get 3 planners lined up and they've all got different opinions on what you should and could do. And to me, that's not right. I think there is guidelines that we work with, but it needs streamlined. I mean, we've seen planners asking us to withdraw our application and resubmit it at no cost so that it keeps the numbers right. And you don't want to upset them, but sometimes you have got to bang the table and say, look, we try to build our business around about this and expand our business, or we're trying to run a business based on, if you had all of your developments waiting and the planners making a decision, you wouldn't have a business. Mm-hmm. So it's having that, as I was saying, we've got we know what we're doing in the next 5 years because everything's in, we've got planning consent and it's going through the building warrant process, ground investigation, all of these processes now that you must do to obtain planning consent and get the conditions taken off. Yeah,
I think something I'm picking up on here, and myself and Nick kind of speak about, we like the foundation of a solid buy-to-let portfolio. Is your business able to succeed now because of the assets that are in the company producing rental income monthly, daily, weekly, with all the properties you've built up over the years that you can actually take on these developments? And if it takes 3 years to go through planning, your business can survive it, rather than if it was someone starting out from scratch, like you say, they'd be just sitting waiting on the planning with money out, nothing coming back in.
Yeah, no, definitely the profits for the business definitely subsidise the process, but once you're in the process, you're in. So you if the timing's right, as you're finishing one development, you're starting another. I mean, for instance, we've just finished the old Shakespeare Street School up in North Kelvin side, the heart of the West End, Nick, remember? Yeah. But I mean, try to push that out. But again, that was an old school, old playing fields, and we developed 86 flats there, all sold completely. The old building was, it was 29 flats in the old building, but they were stunning.
Lovely.
Very high ceilings, 4-metre windows, and that building shines now that it's finished. It really does. What would have happened to that if it wasn't sold? I mean, it lay for 2.5-3 years before it was marketed. So, needless to say, the vandals get in, nicked all the lead off the roof. Aye. It's the water in all these buildings that causes all the damage. It's no anything else. No breaking the windows. It's so that building was. If it lay another year, it would have been getting demolished, which is a crying shame. Now, I'm no hanging my hat on that. I like the old buildings, but I'm looking at it commercially. Yeah. I know a lot of people were lining up to buy it because they had to adhere to the conditions the council was saying. And the council are saying, you must develop it and you must do it in a time scale. And the council have smartened up as well. Whereas 15 years ago, you just bought the building and got on with it. Now, they've got caveats in place that if you make more profit and you think you're going to make, they want a share of it. They want a first charge security over the property. Try telling that to a lender when you go to the bank and say, right, give me some money. Right, council, will you take a second charge? Well, we'll think about that. We'll come back to you in 3 or 4 months' time when we think about it again. And they make it so bloody difficult.
But they also want to be, they also want to see Glasgow as this flourishing, vibrant, city centre with no empty units and all that as well.
A lot of them are good do-gooders and they want to see that and they'll talk the right game, but they'll then spout policy at you and say, right, well, you need to go and get a bat survey before we can even take that forward, and then you'll need to see if there's any newts on there, and then you'll need to see something else, and they've got all these different ecologists going about. That's money. Now, see, for any potential developer taking it on, unless you've got an income till you get through the planning process, you're stuffed. But even getting through the process, the hoops that you're jumping through, it's not just a case of getting planning consent. It will be get the conditions that they attach to that before you get the planning they want you to do the full reports on it. Soil investigation, you've got to do the full soil investigation report now. And that could cost tens of thousands of pounds. That's only one of the things you've got to do.
Nice. You're putting your hand in your pocket deeply before you're even getting the kind of
all the time, Stephen, all the time, and it's getting more so. So I would suspect the developers lining up there are getting less because they're having to spend more money on a development. But the rewards are there. We all know. I mean,
how do you deal with, like, sorry, I know we're running out of time here, probably coming up to the hour, but just a couple more questions, if you don't mind. How do you deal with, like in my industry, the standard residential lettings? I get a lot of this kind of landlord hate, these people who, hate anybody making money. They hate the idea of people.
That's the Scottish culture, unfortunately. Go to America and they're patting you in the back because you've got a nice shiny car. But you just deal with that. They think. I remember as a kid, as I said, nobody had a car in their family. One of my uncles had a taxi. I thought he was minted. And you could have brought up that way, thinking he's got fortunes.
Aye.
And people will be looking at yourself and you, Stephen, to say, right, yous have got property, yous are the grass is greener on the other side. They don't realise the struggles that you're doing.
I don't realise the
But it's tough. It's tough for a lot of people out there, but it's good to get out there and break the cycle and do well for yourself.
Aye.
And to finish up, Bill, what's the kind of future for Spectrum then? Is it going to be? I mean, I know you've got your kind of 5-year plan for these developments. Have you got much thinking but beyond that?
No, sticking with the property mainly, as I said, and as you pointed out, the build to rent market is definitely going to be the way forward. I see it as a drip and roast. It will be not all of your eggs in the one basket. We've got spread over mainly residential, commercial, but 70% still commercial. People still need property. We'll continue doing that, investing in our properties, looking for planning gains in anything that we have, and investing in our staff. That try to make it as we want people to come to work and enjoy it, and get rewarded for it as well.
And do you manage for other commercial landlords as well? Or is it all your own stock?
All our own. No, we wouldn't. We've been asked numerous times to factor for properties. We wouldn't do it. It's a sore head. In fact, we factor out our own stuff. Where the one in North Kelvin apartments, 86 units, that is factored out. Shettleston's factored out. We looked at it at one time, should we do our own self-factoring, but they look at you different. Nobody likes a factor. They've got to pay them the money. Back to the days, Hackney and Patterson, everybody hated them. They never knew them, but they hated them because they had to pay them money.
I know. Everyone hates a factor and everyone hates an agent as well. Like, I know.
It's because you're minted, Nick.
Aye. Listen, we would love to come and actually physically meet up with you at some point. Maybe even come to one of your projects or something like that, if you would have us along.
I'd love to show you. Now, I mean, the ones that are kicking off just now, yeah, they're exciting stages, and the ones that are finishing off as well.
Yeah,
they're just as exciting, and there's a process there.
Especially the old ones, they sound fantastic. Obviously, not being from Glasgow, I'm not understanding the areas you're talking about, but I do recognise some of the buildings you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, Nick, you touched on Tollcross Mansion House.
Yes.
Now, that Tollcross Mansion House, that was a country estate, the Tollcross Park, 100 acres. The Dunlop family, they were merchants back in the late 1800s. They lost their money with the 1900 recession. The Bank of Scotland repossessed it and sold it to Glasgow City Council for 25 grand.
Is that right? Aye. Wow.
And Glasgow City Council's retained it. That building's been a children's museum, and latterly it was taken on with Shettleston Housing as assisted living, and that was fully redeveloped 1999, 2000.
Is that purchase price, was that disclosed at all?
It wasn't, and I'm going to keep it under my hat right now because we're still going through the development just now. So, and it's not for sale either, but it's still, it'll be out in the public domain soon.
I was going to see if we could get a wee exclusive here on the Scottish Property Podcast.
Lovely to show it. Hey, great building to see, though. It's a
Yeah.
great condition. We're redoing the roof and doing a lot of work to the stonework, but that is a perfect example of how it can be done. And we'll be retaining that for rental.
Excellent.
And that's the market we're going down.
Well, that sounds great. I mean, if we can try and line up, well, after the call, or we'll get an email or your, I think it's Steph that I've been communicating.
Steph, that's my daughter, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe try and sort something out. That'd be awesome. Listen, Bill, we'd like to thank you very much for your time. You've been absolutely brilliant. It's been great having you on. And
thank you, guys. Nick, Stephen, it was a pleasure, and I look forward to showing you some of the properties that we're currently working on. Definitely.
Really appreciate that, Bill. Thank you very much for coming on.
Brilliant. And I wish you all the best in your ventures.
Cheers.
Thanks very much, Bill. Nice one.
Hey, guys. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so really buzzing after that chat with Bill. We're going to try and meet up with him at one of his Glasgow site developments as well, which will be really good. He was actually calling us from his holiday home in Portugal there, so we're going to grab him when he comes back to Scotland.
Oh, absolutely. He's the kind of guy that you just wish was your dad or your granddad or someone in your immediate family. You could just shoot the shit with him and talk to him all day long and grab a coffee. But he's very graciously offered to get a meet up with him as well and grab a coffee and see his site. So I think we'll probably be doing that on the 1st of June when I venture through to the west side.
Oh my goodness, mate. You better have your passport in hand, because the big dogs...
I've left my passport.
The big dogs come to Glasgow. So we've got Stephen lined up as a guest speaker for our Glasgow 1st of June event at the Glenhill Hotel. I'm sure that's going to be really struggling for ticket sales now.
I'm looking forward to see how you do these events, because they look buzzing. It looks like a great event. You always get a really good crowd, so I'm actually buzzing to come through.
As always, guys, head on to Eventbrite and grab your tickets. We do Aberdeen, Dundee and Edinburgh all on the same night, first Wednesday of every month. Get on our social medias on Instagram at Scottish Property Podcast, tag us, and please subscribe to the podcast as well, whether you listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you click the subscribe button, leave us a review, and we'd love to hear from you. And thanks very much for all your support and listens. Take care.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.